hoping that in today's video, you're going to really see something about this matter of the ego, the false sense of self, and at the same time, have an unveiling around your true nature, which I'm always talking about on this channel. And today you're going to find out why it's so important. This is a big topic, and I know it's going to trigger some of you, but I'm going to attempt it nonetheless. It helps to realize that the ideas you have about yourself are not ultimately true. It's normal for you to have thoughts about yourself, both positive and negative. But if you identify with any of these thoughts that you have about yourself, then you don't realize that these thoughts are only partially true, made-up ideas or interpretations. When your thoughts become your identity, that is called ego. Ego is a case of mistaken identity. You believe that the illusory thoughts that come and go are your true self. Your true self is the dimension of you that does not come and go. When you're identified with ego, you believe wholeheartedly that your concepts are true. You might have the idea, I'm a good listener, or I'm not good at singing. Ego doesn't recognize that these are just made-up ideas. An idea represents just one interpretation out of an unlimited number of possibilities. It's an illusory reality that will change the instant it's replaced by another thought. When you become wedded to this narrow and insubstantial view of your conceptual mind, you become positional, believing that your view is the only position or the best position. You stubbornly defend your view as the only right view. You get stuck in this view and become dogmatic and rigid. You become unwilling to change. You become arrogant in asserting that you are right and the others are wrong. Being wedded to ego's worldview is what underlies all personal, political, international and religious conflicts. It's what leads to war. As you realize the true nature of ego, you wake up to an expanded view of life. So in this quote we see that it's perfectly normal to have thoughts, all kinds of thoughts, many of them throughout the day. Let's not make thought the enemy here. Actually, when you think about it, thought is really an incredible gift. We just need to know how to use it properly. The problem is our identification with our thoughts. We seem to be so attached to them that we mistake them for truth and reality. You know, a thought pops up and we latch onto it. We believe it. It becomes part of the coloured lens through which we look at all of life. That lens over time ends up becoming very distorted. So we no longer see things clearly as they actually are. We're looking at things through our thoughts and beliefs that we've accumulated over the years. This is called the conditioned mind. And if we want things to change, we need to wake up to this. When your thoughts become your identity, that is called ego. Ego is a case of mistaken identity. You believe that the thoughts that come and go are your true self. These 3 short sentences are probably the best explanation I've come across about the ego. Your thoughts become your identity. When we're identified so strongly with our thoughts, with this idea that we have of who we are and how the world is and how everyone else is, we become very narrow-minded because we believe so strongly that our concepts are true. We can't see anyone else's point of view. These thoughts become our entire world. One of the biggest insights I ever had was realizing that I am not my thoughts. You are not your thoughts. There's an intellectual way to receive these words. Okay, yes, obviously I'm not my thoughts, right? But there's a deeper way to receive them. This is where the wisdom within you is sparked, and there's a deep realization that this is actually life-changing, perspective-shifting information, that we are not our thoughts. Can you recognize today all the made-up ideas that you've taken to be truth? What do you believe you're good at? What do you believe you're not good at? What do you believe is wrong with you? How do you believe you need to improve yourself? And what about everyone else? What do you think is wrong with everyone else? I'm sure we all have a few opinions there, don't we? The important thing here to grasp is that your entire belief system can be built on this very flaky ground of thought. Because the fact is that a thought can very easily be replaced by another thought, another opinion, another belief. And that changes everything. Your entire world can be turned upside down, as mine was, in the most wonderful way when you realize most of the thoughts that you've ever had about yourself and everyone else and the world aren't actually true. The quote says, when you become wedded to this narrow view of the conceptual mind, then you wholeheartedly believe that you're right and everyone else is wrong. Wedded. I want you to pay attention to this word, wedded. Don't be married to your thoughts anymore. In fact, I highly recommend a healthy divorce. And what I mean by divorce is that you don't need to be one with your thoughts anymore. You can change your relationship with them instantly. I love the words at the end of that quote where it says, as you wake up to the ego, as you become aware of the power of these thoughts and beliefs that you've held for so long, you wake up to an expanded view of life. Suddenly, it's like the horses with the blinkers. You thought life was like this, and then you realize that you've been seeing everything through this filter of your conditioned mind. And suddenly, you wake up to an expanded view. Suddenly your world is much larger and kinder and more beautiful. There's a wonderful quote actually by Jim Carrey, who describes his awakening experience as, I used to think I was a guy experiencing the universe, but now I see that I'm the universe experiencing a guy. And what a profound shift in perspective, right? Now we're going to listen to some wise words by one of my favorites, Eckhart. And in this quote, Eckhart is answering a question that is on all our hearts. Why do human beings have conflict? Why is there war? Why do we kill each other? Humans live from what I call the ego. The ego is a false sense of self. It's a mental image of who you are, created by mind activity, things you identify with. The ego is dysfunctional in many ways. It's even more dysfunctional in its collective aspect. When you get collective egos, which means nations or tribes or religions, the ego, in order to enhance its ultimately fictitious sense of identity, because it's just a mind-made identity, needs to emphasize the otherness of others. It needs its enemies in order to feel its own identity more strongly. You have to be other. I cannot recognize my oneness with you because that would detract from my sense of identity. Nations do it to each other. Political parties do it to each other. You're trapped in a collective abstract sense of identity, and so you can no longer recognize the other as a human being. Once you've attached a mental label to the other, you've basically dehumanized them. Then, very unconscious people can even inflict violence on others, because by attaching mental labels, they've dehumanized the other. We need to go beyond the ego, which is produced by unconscious identification with mind activity, to realize who we truly are beyond the fictitious mind, the fictitious identity. And what's the first thing he says to answer that question? Humans live from the ego. He says the ego is dysfunctional in many ways, and we see this especially in the collective ego. Have you ever heard of the collective ego? I remember when I first came across this expression and I thought, oh, suddenly a lot of things are starting to make sense. In order to strengthen its own identity, the ego needs to have enemies. So what does the ego do? It judges and it slaps a label onto that person or that group of people. Now, we've been very good at slapping labels on each other in recent years. We're coming up with all kinds of new labels. But don't you see that we're dehumanizing each other by doing this? We're no longer seeing each other's true being. Instead of looking at you as a person who I share life with, who I share this world with, who I share a spiritual consciousness with, instead of seeing you as my fellow human being, I see you as what you're suffering from. I see you as your religion, your political party, your country, your sexual preference, your gender identity, the color of your skin. We've completely lost sight of our shared being. And we no longer see each other, really see each other. And I love Eckhart's last words in this quote: we need to go beyond the ego, beyond the fictitious identity. We need to realize who we truly are. Do you see the importance of this? This isn't just for a few spiritual seekers. This is for all of humanity. Isn't it the most important thing to know thyself? Finally, I want to share with you the tail end of one of the most excellent speeches I've ever heard. This is by Gleason at the time. She's now Olson. speaking to a group of high school students in Chicago about the nature of the mind and how no one can force you to think something, that you have freedom of thought. And she says that basically, once you realize that you have a free mind, no one has any power over you anymore. This is the conclusion of her speech. I want to talk a little bit about how understanding that your mind is your own and that it's ultimately free is what allows you to be a force for peace in this world. When you realize that your mind is your own, you can't blame anybody else. And when you can't blame anybody else, you can't be angry at the world. Knowing freedom of mind helps us to stop being angry at other people and behaving out of that anger. Violence stops making sense when you don't have a bunch of people who are angry at each other anymore. Think about it. The only way you can get angry at someone is if you think they made you feel bad, correct? If you don't think other people can make you feel bad, you're not going to act on your anger. You're going to see it as temporary thought. It's going to come and it's going to go. I could live in a world where I see a bunch of people who are angry at each other and divided, or not. I could see a world where people are innocently doing the best they can with the thinking that they have, that they don't realize is coming from them and not the outside world. So you start to see that if you can be a model for people seeing the power of their own minds, seeing the freedom of their own minds, you're going to exist in your community in a way in which you just breed peace, because you aren't accidentally a part of the problem. You become a part of the solution. In order to boldly embrace your freedom of mind, you have to be a rebel. You have to be a rebel because this is not the story that's being told in the world right now. The opposite story is being told. Everything in the media is about dividing us, making us fearful, and making us think we're against each other. It's not true. It's a lie. But you're going to have to boldly stand up and say, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm not going to go with the mainstream. I'm not buying it. Why? Because I know that my mind is free. And I know that if everybody knew that, we'd live in a peaceful world. When we realize that we have a free mind, that we're free to think anything we want, that thought is a creative energy, and that creative capacity belongs to us. It's been given to us. Then thought can become a tool rather than a prison. So now, instead of being victims of life and spreading this energy of stress and anger and frustration, we become a force of peace in the world. Isn't this what the world needs? More than ever? I'm hoping that through this video, some of this stress and anxiety about the world situation will dissipate and instead be transformed into peace and love, which is really what is needed. And understanding, wisdom. The world needs wisdom. Imagine a world where people aren't angry. Or perhaps a world without so many angry people in it. If we understand what's going on with the ego, then we'll see that everyone's actually doing the best they can according to their understanding. I love this line that Mara says, because you aren't accidentally a part of the problem, you become part of the solution. We've accidentally been a part of the problem for long enough, haven't we? We can all become part of the solution. So how do we become a rebel for peace in this world? Well, first of all, we see what's going on. We see that it's just a bunch of egos doing what they do. Stop perpetuating this story of misery, of separation, of us and them. Isn't it time we grew up as a human race? Keep listening to that wisdom within you. You'll come to know yourself more deeply. And with this deeper understanding of yourself, you'll spontaneously have an understanding and appreciation for your fellow human beings. This will change the way you go through life. This will transform your relationships. And this will have an energetic ripple effect on the entire world. What a blessing to go through life as a beacon of peace instead of a ball of stress. Suddenly, it's like the horses with the blinkers. You thought, I can't do it with the other hand because I'm holding the selfie stick. Right, you thought, you lose that connectedness, that, hello? Now, one thing the ego loves to do is to object and to argue and to doubt. Actually, that's more than one thing, isn't it?